Would you trade your heart for comfort? Would you bury your dreams in silk sheets just to escape poverty? My name is Zalyra, and I made a decision that changed everything. I married a man I did not love. A man whose money saved my family, but slowly killed my spirit. In a mansion full of cold marble and silence, I found warmth not in my husband's arms, but in the calloused hands of the gardener named Thane. I married for money, but love. Love grew in the dirt. And when it bloomed, it came with thorns that cut deeper than I ever imagined. This is not just a love story. It's a story of secrets, sacrifice, and a forbidden garden that almost cost us everything. If you love stories that make your heart race, eyes tear, and leave you begging for the next chapter, then hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the bell. Because this story is about to get dangerous. The courtroom smelled like old wood and fresh injustice. My father stood at the center of it all, trembling hands clasped before him, his sun-worn face drawn and tired. The judge's voice echoed through the room like a funeral bell, announcing a sentence for a crime he never committed. Pay the fine of 20 million naira within 7 days, or serve 8 years in prison. I couldn't breathe. 20 million? We didn't even have 20,000. And we had just 7 days. People whispered around us. Some pitied him. Others sneered. But no one stood up. No one believed in an old mechanic accused of stealing engine parts from the very factory he'd served for 30 years. It was a setup. We all knew. But the law had no heart. And I had no power. Until he walked in. Degra Fatted. The man who owned half the city. The man whose eyes held more secrets than God himself. And the man who, for reasons I didn't understand, had been watching me for months. He walked into that courtroom with a grace that made silence fall like a curtain. His black agbada swayed softly as he approached the bench and handed something to the clerk. Papers. Money. Influence. Whatever it was, the judge's eyes widened, then dropped. The proceedings ended suddenly. My father would walk free. But Degra didn't come to save a man. He came to claim something. Me. Outside, while my mother clung to my father in tears, Degra walked up to me with that calm, calculated charm I had grown to fear. He didn't smile. He never smiled. I assume you are grateful, Miss Zalyra. I am, I replied, keeping my voice low. My family will never forget what you've done. He tilted his head. Good. Because I'm not running a charity. I blinked. I don't understand. He looked past me as if I were already history. You have 7 days. Marry me, or I will rescind the payment. Your father will go to jail for 8 years. And I won't lift a finger. My heart stopped. Why to me? I asked. My voice cracked on the last word. He leaned in, his cologne expensive and suffocating. Because I don't want love, Zalyra. I want legacy. Plus, obedience. And you, my dear, are perfect for the role. I wanted to scream. To run. But my father's fragile body flashed through my mind, and so did the cold steel of prison bars. You're a monster, I whispered. He didn't flinch. Then become my bride and tame me. That night I couldn't sleep. Every room in our broken house felt like a prison cell closing in. My mother kept praising Degra, calling him a savior. My father, too humiliated to speak, sat in the dark with his head bowed. Only I knew what price we were about to pay. I stared at the stars and wondered if God could hear me, if he ever listened when the choice was between blood and survival. Because in 7 days I would no longer be Zalyra. I would belong to a man whose heart was colder than the marble floors I would walk on. And the only thing worse than marrying him was letting my father rot behind bars. I was being sold in silk. But what none of us knew was that something would bloom in the garden of my prison. Something wild. Something forbidden. Something called Thane. The house had never known silence this heavy. It wasn't peace, it was pressure. And it weighed on me like chains. For 3 days no one spoke about what happened in court, not directly. But the tension spilled into every glance, every whisper, every selfish prayer they muttered when they thought I wasn't listening. The man who saved my father from prison, Degra, hadn't done it out of kindness. He'd done it as a purchase. A transaction. And the product was me. But Zalyra, Aunt Misua said on the second day while folding wrappers with unnecessary force, how many girls your age ever get the chance to marry a man like Degra? Billionaires don't just drop from the sky. I didn't answer. She's acting like she's going to prison. my cousin muttered from the corner, stuffing her mouth with puff. She's not going to prison, my mother snapped. She's going to a palace. She'll wear gold and silk and be driven in cars with tinted glass. Let her stop sulking and be grateful. Grateful. That was the word they used, again and again, as if I'd won a lottery. No one saw the price tag on my heart. No one saw the fear eating me alive. Except my father. He alone sat in silence, arms folded, face like stone. Until he rose on the evening of the third day and said, "Enough." He wore his only clean kaftan, took a folder filled with land documents and walked out. He didn't say where he was going, but I knew. He went to see Degra. Degra, the man with eyes cold enough to make fire freeze. Degra, the man who offered freedom only if it came dressed in a wedding gown. For 2 long hours I waited by the door, my heart pounding like a war drum. When my father returned, the air around him was heavier than ever. He sank into the wooden bench and let out a breath that seemed to take years off his life. "I gave him everything," he said quietly. "I offered him my service for life, to be his slave without pay. I offered him every inch of land our family has ever owned. Every farm, every harvest. I told him to take it all. I knelt before him, tears already streaming. I begged him," he continued. "I told him my daughter is not a trophy. I told him I would rather wear prison chains than let you wear a wedding ring forged in blackmail." I held his hands. And what did he say? He looked at me then. The way a father looks at a daughter the night before she's handed over to a man she doesn't love. With grief. With apology. With helpless rage. He smiled, my father whispered. And said, "I already have land. I already have workers. I want Zalaira." That night I couldn't sleep. My mother wept silently in her corner, but not for me. For the opportunity slipping from her fingers. My siblings went about their business, already daydreaming about a new life in the city, never once asking how I felt. Only my father came to me after midnight, knelt by my bedside and whispered, "I will break myself 1,000 times for you, Zalaira. But if you choose to walk into that house, know that I will fight every day to remind you are not a prisoner. You're my daughter. My blood." And so the choice remained. Not whether to say yes, because everyone had already done that for me, but whether to lose my father to injustice, or lose myself to a man whose heart knew no mercy. I had never stepped foot inside a house that smelled like power. Not until that day. Everything about Degra's mansion screamed control, from the carved marble lions by the gate to the silent, suited guards who bowed without smiles. The chandelier above the grand hallway glittered like a sky of diamonds, and yet I felt like I was drowning in darkness. I was ushered into a private study that smelled of cigar, citrus, and secrets. And there he was, Degra, draped in a royal blue kaftan, his back turned to me as he gazed out the tall windows, one hand behind him like a general who'd already conquered the battlefield. He didn't turn. He didn't need to. His voice was quiet and cruelly calm. "You came." "I had to," I said. My voice was steady. "Barely." He finally turned. His eyes, as always, unreadable. But I didn't come to read them. I came to plead. "Degra," I began, heart pounding, "please, don't do this." He tilted his head, amused. "Do what?" "Take everything else. My father offered you his life. A man his age willing to serve you without pay. He gave you our family's land, our legacy. That's not a bargain, that's a sacrifice. Isn't that enough?" He walked toward me slowly, like a man circling something he already owned. "I don't need another servant," he said. "I have hundreds." "Then take the land." "I have land in 5 countries. What I don't have," he stepped closer, "is you." I took a step back, my breath shallow. "That day," he said, almost whispering now, "when your father brought you to the factory, you wore a yellow scarf. You sat on a wooden bench, legs crossed like a queen unaware of her own throne. That was the day I stopped breathing." He stared at me like I was a story he'd memorized. "That was the day you stole my heart, Zalaira. You didn't even look at me. But I saw you, and something in me broke. I knew I would never be whole again until I had you. Not just near me, not just around me, but mine. Wiggly. Eternally." I couldn't breathe. The room felt like it was closing in. "I've built empires," he continued, voice rising with passion. "I've conquered competitors, shattered records, bought loyalty. But no price has ever mattered more to me than the one I'm paying for you. He leaned forward, eyes burning. I don't care how unnatural this seems. If buying you is the only way to have you, then let the world call it madness. As I call it mercy. You're not just a woman to me. You're my medicine, Zalyra. I want you to heal my wounds. My pride. My emptiness. Silence. I stood still. Broken. Horrified. Then I spoke. Swiftly. Fully. And with the full weight of my soul. Degra, you say I'm your medicine. But you never asked if I'm sick myself. He blinked. You speak of healing. But how can I heal you when you've torn me open just to touch me? You don't even know me, Degra. You saw me once. And built a fantasy around a girl who didn't even know your name. Tears filled my eyes, not for him but for myself. You've decided I'm your cure. Your prize. Your redemption. But what if I told you? I cry myself to sleep at night? That I have dreams I buried so deep even I forget them sometimes? That I'm not made of silk and grace and saviorhood. I'm just me. A girl trying to survive in a world that keeps selling her off like cattle. He looked away, jaw clenched. You say you'll pay anything to have me, I whispered. But that's the problem. Love isn't paid for. It's earned. Degra stared at me stunned. As if no one had ever dared speak to him like that before. I don't know you, Degra, I continued, voice cracking. And you don't know me. You want the image of me, the quiet girl in a yellow scarf. But I'm not her anymore. That girl didn't know what it felt like to be bartered for a court fine. That girl didn't know that the man who claimed to love her would choose possession over her pain. Tears rolled freely now. You think I'll heal you? No, Degra. Bought love doesn't heal. It wounds deeper. And one day you'll wake up beside me and realize, you never loved me. You loved your idea of me. And that idea will rot, because it was never real. I took a deep breath and stepped back. Let my father go to jail if you must. But I won't marry a man who sees me as a cure more than a companion. A trophy more than a person. I turned to leave. My legs shook. My heart shattered. But my soul stood tall. And for the first time Degra said nothing. Because for the first time he realized. He'd built an empire but couldn't earn a heart. The sun had barely climbed the sky when they arrived. 3 black jeeps, engines humming like beasts with secrets. Suited men stepped out first. Tall, silent, intimidating. Then came the drummers. Yes, drummers. As though this was a coronation and not a confrontation. They beat their talking drums in rhythms that mocked my heartbeat. Neighbors peeked through half-closed windows. Children ran barefoot just to catch a glimpse. And then from the last car he stepped out. Degra. His white agbada gleamed like it had swallowed the morning light. Rings on every other finger. Eyes hidden behind dark glasses. A walking empire built on steel and silence. He didn't knock. He didn't need to. Our door had already opened, more from shock than welcome. My mother curtsied in nervous respect. My siblings scrambled to make space in the sitting room. Aunt Misua stammered her greetings. But my father remained seated. So did I. Degra stood tall in the middle of the room as if claiming territory. He looked around, slowly removing his glasses, revealing eyes that burned not with anger, but possession. Then he spoke. Your daughter visited the lion in his den yesterday, and returned home unhurt. His voice thundered gently, the way only money can teach a man to speak. I believe that makes her brave. Or foolish. Or both. He paused, then smiled thinly. But now the lion has come to her nest, not with claws but with a crown. The room held its breath. I am here to take my prey, he said slowly, not forcefully but at a great price. Because I am old enough to know what I want and wise enough to know how I want it. And what I want is Zalyra. Not her father. Not her mother. Not her land or legacy. He turned slightly, facing no one in particular and yet commanding everyone. I am a businessman. I don't speak in love songs or poetic dreams. Money, that is my native tongue. Not romance. Not affection. Maybe the blame belongs to those who raised me. They taught me never to play with things I cannot own. His eyes met mine. If I can't buy it, I should let it go. That's what they said. But Zalyra, his voice softened, you are the first thing I've ever wanted that came with no price tag. Silence. Everyone turned to my father who had sat quietly, his fingers interlaced, his jaw clenched like a dam holding back a flood. Then slowly he stood. The weight of age bowed his shoulders, but the fire in his eyes had not dimmed. I heard you, Degra, he said. I listened. And I understand now. You weren't taught to love, only to purchase. Degra said nothing. But perhaps, my father continued, stepping forward, it is time someone told you the truth. Your wealth has shielded you from your whole life. His voice rose, calm but piercing. I never told you that my daughter is for sale. Gasps rippled across the room. But he wasn't done. She is not a painting in a gallery for the highest bidder. She is not a field to be claimed. She is not your redemption, your cure, or your prize. She is a woman with a soul, a mind, and a heart. And hearts are not bought. Not by empires. Not by empty poetry dressed as gold. Degra's lips parted slightly as though he wanted to speak but forgot how. My father stepped closer. You walked in here like a king. But the man who will win Zalaira, if ever, will come not with drums, but with decency. Not with jeeps, but with gentleness. And not with a price, but a purpose. He turned away, then added quietly, Now if you still think she is your prey, Degra, you are not a lion. You are a coward. The room hung in silence like a fragile thread pulled too tight. My father had just dropped words that struck like thunder, shattering the pride in Degra's smooth-spoken declarations. But before any breath could be drawn in his defense or his shame, my mother's voice broke in like a startled dove fluttering into a storm. Please, Sir Degra, she said, rising with trembling hands, her wrapper shifting at her waist as though weighed by fear. Don't be offended. My husband, he speaks from pain, not wisdom. She turned to him, her eyes wide, swimming with desperate tears. You don't know the shame we've swallowed since this matter began. The neighbors talk. The church whispers. People already point at our gate. If he goes to prison, oh, we will be nothing but carcasses in the mouth of gossip. She reached for Degra's hands, the way one would reach for medicine after weeks of untreated sickness. My husband doesn't see the honor you bring. He doesn't understand the kindness you've shown us, how much you've already done. But I do. I see it. And I am sorry. Please, Sir Degra. Her voice faltered as she fell to her knees. Come back next month for your wife. By then I would have calmed the senselessness in this house. My husband, my daughter. They'll see clearer. I promise. Don't let their foolishness ruin this blessing. The others, my uncles, my aunts, my own siblings, followed her lead. They knelt too. I stood frozen as the air thickened with humiliation. My father's face went pale. He didn't speak. He couldn't. Then Degra chuckled, low and cold. Not with mockery but with a strange kind of satisfaction. He reached into the pocket of his agbada and waved to one of his aides, who dashed out like a loyal shadow. Moments later the aide returned, struggling to carry 2 black leather bags, both swollen, puffed and zipped tight. Degra stepped forward, his polished shoes sounding like hammers on our cracked concrete floor. He turned to Mama and said, You are wise, Mama Zalaira. Very wise. And I know you only want what is best for your family. You see through the fog. You understand what many don't. He opened one bag. Bundles of crisp, new naira notes shone like sunlight breaking through clouds. Then he opened the second. Neatly packed, untouched. The scent of wealth filled the room like incense. Everyone gasped. Even my mother covered her mouth. My uncle fell to the floor to count with his eyes. My sister whimpered like someone who had just seen heaven kiss earth. Degra smiled faintly. For your sake, he said, looking into Mama's tear-filled eyes, and for this well-informed, grateful family of yours, I forgive the insults I have endured from your husband and daughter. He paused, letting the room breathe him in. I never knew it was a crime to care. A sin to desire love, imperfect as my ways might be. But I have resolved. He turned to all of them now, arms spread like a preacher at a crusade. I will make this family happy. If only Zalaira will be my medicine. If only she will come and help heal this broken man. He took a slow, calculated step forward. But Mama, he added, I am desperately in need. My heart is sick with longing. I will not be able to wait for a month. Then he bent slightly and gestured again toward the bags. Here is 3 million Nigerian nairas, he said. Bright price. For you, Mama. Feel free to ask for more if your customs demand it. There's more from where this came from. Hard-earned money. Not stolen. Not inherited. Not washed. Blood and sweat money. The room spun in awe. One of my cousins started to cry. Another aunt whispered a soft, trembling prayer. My younger brother's mouth hung open as if seeing Degra as God. But not me. Not my father. We stood still. Unmoved. As if the noise of riches failed to reach our ears. Because our hearts, already burning, could not be bought. Not today. Not ever. The silence that followed Degra's display of wealth didn't last long. Before anyone could speak, Zelira dashed out of the room like a sudden gust of wind, leaving jaws hanging and hearts pounding. Her slippers slapped against the corridor floor until she returned to the parlor, her bags already packed held tightly in both hands as though she had planned this moment all along. The air thickened. All eyes turned to her. The girl who had once been the voice of reason was now the very storm. With a terrifying calm, Zelira dropped her bags at her feet, dusted her palms and straightened her spine like a queen ready to take the throne of chaos. Then she opened her mouth and every syllable from her lips stung like pepper in the wounds of those who still had hope. "How, family," she began, eyes scanning the faces that had just bowed to gold. "The zebra has been captured. It now follows the lion into his den. Now I know without a doubt that in this land what money cannot buy does not exist. Even the purest of us are only waiting for the right price." She pointed to the bags of money. Her voice hardened. "The price is paid. And it is accepted. The good cannot resist." Everyone froze. Her words echoed like a curse wrapped in clarity. "My bride price is paid. Right away I follow my husband." Suddenly her father leapt from his seat, rage and heartbreak burning in his eyes like wildfire. "Zelira," he thundered. "You will do no such thing. You will never follow him. Over my dead body. I've made up my mind. I'd rather go to jail with pure conscience than live free watching my daughter sold like a slave to a man whose only god is money." His voice cracked. "Take your load back to your room. He does not have my blessing. He will never have my goodwill. Let him go away with his money, let him rot in his riches, but you, my daughter, you will not be his trophy." Zelira stared at him no longer with love but something colder. Something that no longer bled at the sound of her father's pain. She turned to one of Degra's aides. "Take my bag." He obeyed without hesitation. Then Zelira hurried toward Degra, reached for his hand, and with a dry laugh that barely hid the storm behind her eyes, she whispered, "My dear, let's go now before I change my mind. You already have my mother in your pocket. That's all the consent the world seems to care about." Without looking back, not once, Zelira stormed out of the house, her wrapper flying like a broken flag behind her. She climbed into Degra's black jeep, shut the door and rolled up the glass like she was closing off her past. No ring. No flowers. No food nor wine. No joy. No music. No covenant. No promises. Just a girl, bought like a goat in the market square, driven into a stranger's mansion as an uncelebrated bride, clothed in silence, wrapped in regret, and ushered into a vineyard she never sowed, but might now be forced to reap. The black SUV rolled smoothly into the grand compound of Degra's estate, a kingdom of glass, gold, and gardens manicured like heaven had a gardener. As the car slowed to a gentle halt, Zelira sat frozen beside Degra, her heart pounding against her chest like a prisoner pleading to escape. But her face remained unreadable, carved from the same stone she used to silence her tears. When the door opened and she stepped out, not a single gasp echoed from the mansion workers. No looks of surprise. No whisper of scandal. They simply bowed. As if they had seen this before. And they had. This was not the first time a woman was delivered like cargo into Degra's fortress. And by the look in their eyes, it would not be the last. But Zelira didn't know that. To her, the precision with which the maids and stewards dashed into action, taking her bags, lowering their eyes in rehearsed humility, leading her up the marble stairs like royalty, was deeply unsettling and oddly flattering. "Welcome, ma'am," one of the stewards said as he bowed low. "Your room has been specially prepared. Please allow us." Zelira blinked. Her room. They had already prepared a room for her? As the doors swung open, she gasped. Silk curtains danced in the wind. Chandeliers like frozen fire glowed from the ceiling. The bed was a queen's haven, spread with satin sheets and pillows that looked like clouds. A bouquet of rare white roses stood on the dresser with a note that read, "To the one who healed a beast without touching him. Degra." The maids began to unpack her bags. Someone slid her feet into velvet slippers. Another offered her a fruit drink. One brought a silk robe. Everything happened so fast, too fast, like a dream scripted and rehearsed 1,000 times. Zalyra stood still, caught in the whirlwind of it all. Was she dreaming? Was she dead? Or had her father's rejection simply sold her into a fairy tale dressed like a golden cage? "Would you like your bath now, ma'am?" one maid asked politely. Zalyra nodded slowly, not from understanding but submission. She was led to the bathroom, a temple of marble and scented waters, the tub already running, petals floating on the surface like silent dancers. As she soaked in the warmth, her body began to relax, but her mind refused to be quiet. How do they know what I like? Why do they all treat me like I've always belonged here? How many other women have passed through this paradise and disappeared into silence? Still, a strange comfort started creeping in. The softness of the towels, the gentle tone of the maids, the way the walls seemed to hold her gently. A part of her wanted to feel safe here. A part of her liked it. And that scared her even more. Later, as she sat by the window overlooking the fountain-lit garden, one of the maids whispered, "You're special, ma'am. He has never looked at any woman the way he looks at you." Zalyra didn't respond. She just watched the water dance in the garden, wondering what kind of spell she had just walked into. A palace of peace on the outside. A battlefield of ownership on the inside. Dinner at Degra's mansion was not a meal, it was an event. The long mahogany table glittered under golden lights. Dishes from across the globe were lined up with theatrical precision. Italian ravioli, Ghanaian jollof, French duck confit, Nigerian ofensala with pounded yam, all made for a woman who barely had the appetite to speak. Zalyra sat at the far end of the table, dressed in a silk lavender gown that one of the maids had insisted she wear. Her hair was combed back like royalty. She looked like a bride. She felt like a hostage in velvet. Across from her, Degra sat, confident, composed, and completely unaware that his charm was crashing into a wall of silence. "You know," he began, swirling his wine with elegance, "I never planned to fall for anyone. My heart, it's been through fire. Women, Zalyra, they came for the money, the name, the fantasy. But you walked into my office like a storm I didn't expect." Zalyra said nothing. She watched the spoon in her soup go still. Degra leaned forward, a crooked smile playing on his lips. "I saw you once, Zalyra. Once. And something inside me broke. Or healed. Or maybe both. I said to myself, this girl is the end of all my wandering." Still no response. He chuckled lightly. "I know you're probably still shocked. But with time you'll understand. I'm not trying to own you. I'm trying to make you the queen of this castle. Everything here, it's yours. All I ask in return is that you try. Try to see me. Try to love me." Zalyra looked up for the first time. Her eyes, glassy and unmoved, met his. "Try," she said softly. "Try to fall in love with the man who placed a price on me because he couldn't win my heart freely?" Degra's smile faded. "Zalyra, She raised her hand gently. "Please. I'm not ready for this tonight. I'm tired. Not just in my body but here." She placed her hand over her chest. "Everything you say sounds like an echo in a place I haven't built walls for. This mansion is beautiful, Degra, but it's not a home. Not yet. Maybe not ever." There was a long pause. Even the distant sound of the fountain seemed to go quiet. "May I be excused?" she asked, her voice low but firm. Degra nodded stiffly. "Of course. If that's what you need." She stood slowly with all the grace of someone burying herself alive in silk. She walked away, her bare feet whispering against the marbled floor, leaving behind untouched food, unanswered gestures, and a man who had everything, but still couldn't buy what mattered most. Love. Zalyra didn't look back. Because what was the point? Some castles were never built to be homes. The room Zalyra was led to after dinner glowed softly with golden lights and smelled faintly of vanilla and lilies. The sheets were tucked without wrinkles. A tray with warm milk and honeyed bread sat quietly on a side table. Everything looked like luxury's embrace, but Zalyra felt like she had walked into a well-decorated cell. She stood at the window gazing out into the night. The stars were out. Free. She wasn't. Her body was draped in silk. Her feet touched imported rugs. But her soul was barefoot in a strange wilderness, wandering in questions too heavy for one heart. A gentle knock came at the door. She didn't answer. The knock came again. "Ma'am, may I come in?" a soft female voice asked. Zalyra turned. "Who is it?" "It's Juffa, one of your maids. I brought you something you might like." Zalyra hesitated, then opened the door. Juffa stepped in with a small hand-woven basket in her arms. "This is something I made myself. It's nothing much, just scented soaps and herbs that help calm the nerves. I thought maybe tonight, you could use something gentle." Zalyra's lips parted slightly. No one had spoken to her like that since the madness began. "Thank you," she said quietly, accepting the gift. Juffa nodded. "You're welcome. I just thought, sometimes people come here and forget who they are. But something tells me you won't." Zalyra gave a faint, sad smile. "I'm trying," she said, voice shaking. "But it's hard to remember who I am when everyone's acting like I should be grateful." Juffa stepped closer. "You don't owe anyone gratitude for a golden leash, ma'am. Some of us know what this place really is. We just don't have the wings to escape it. But you," she paused, then whispered, "your fire is still burning." Zalyra's eyes welled up. "Then why do I feel like I'm dying in places no one can see?" Juffa reached for her hand gently. "Because they caged your body, but they haven't yet caged your spirit. Don't let them." Zalyra looked at her, speechless. A stranger in a strange house had become the first to remind her she wasn't going crazy, just captured. That night, long after Juffa had gone, Zalyra lay on the wide bed, staring at the ceiling. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply whispered to herself, "If they want to make me a queen here, they should know. I was born a warrior." And somewhere in the distance, the wind howled through Degra's towering trees, as if even the night was mourning what this girl had lost, and silently cheering for what she had yet to reclaim. That night, Zalyra slept not in peace but in fragments. Her body surrendered to exhaustion, but her soul slipped quietly into the waiting arms of a haunting dream. In the vision, she stood beneath a tall, ancient tree in the heart of a lonely forest. The skies were red like fire and everything around her whispered danger. Then Degra appeared, smiling, gentle, unnaturally calm. Without saying a word, he took a long silk rope and began tying her hands to the tree. She didn't resist. Maybe part of her thought he'd stop. But he didn't. He tied her tighter, slowly, deliberately, almost lovingly, like a man convincing himself this was affection. And then he walked away, mocking her with a backward glance and that same crooked smile. "You're safest here," he whispered, disappearing into the dark. Zalyra struggled, her breath shortening, her arms screaming with pain. She gasped, sobbed, called out. That's when the forest rustled and a stranger emerged. A tall, regal man with piercing eyes and a tenderness that almost brought her to tears. He said nothing. He simply untied her quickly, carried her like she was made of glass and ran, through thorns, rivers and wind. They arrived at another mansion, grander and more golden than Degra's. Its gates opened without effort. Its halls sang of laughter and peace. But inside Zalyra shook. Something in her chest told her, this isn't home either. She looked up at the stranger and cried, "Take me back. Please take me back to my father's house. I don't want to live in another mansion. I don't want luxury without my freedom." Her voice cracked. Her heart burned. "Take me back to my father's house." She screamed so loudly it shattered the dream. And when she opened her eyes, her voice was still echoing. Alive. And then she froze. The room was crowded. Maids, guards, housekeepers. All stood around, staring, bewildered and worried. And sitting closest to her, on her bed, his hand awkwardly on her shoulder, was Degra himself. His face pale, his robe untied, his hair slightly messy, as if he had run into her room the moment he heard her cry. "Zalyra," he said gently, "you were having a nightmare. You screamed so loud. Are you all right? Tell me what's wrong." Her chest rose and fell in panic. Her eyes darted across the faces. Her breathing raced. And then, she whispered in disbelief, "How long have you all been standing here?" No one answered. They all looked to Degra. He swallowed. "Long enough to know you're hurting more than you say." Silence. You were yelling something about your father's house, he added carefully. Why would you ask to go back there? Zalaira blinked. The dream hadn't died. It had followed her into waking. She touched her chest, trembling. Because it's the only place I ever knew love. Not ropes. Not walls. Not rooms where everyone hears me scream but no one understands why. The silence grew heavier. Degra stood up slowly, motioned for the staff to leave. They obeyed one after the other until it was just the two of them in that massive, lonely room. He looked at her one last time quietly, his confidence shaken. And then he left too without another word. Zalaira was alone again. But this time, she was not confused. The dream had spoken. The cage may be golden. The rooms may be beautiful. But if it takes your voice, your freedom, and your father's blessing, then it's not a palace. It's just another kind of prison. The morning sun filtered softly through the towering windows of Degra's mansion, painting golden patterns on the marble floor. Zalaira was awoken gently by the sound of light footsteps and soft knocks, maids ushering in her morning routine with respectful bows and whispered greetings. She didn't respond. She simply stood dressed and allowed herself to be led like a queen to the breakfast table. It was a spread fit for royalty. Glistening silverware. Crystal glasses. A meal garnished with luxury and intention. A steaming plate of jollof rice, fried plantains, salad arranged like art, and an orchestra of assorted meats resting in thick aromatic sauce. But as she sat and took her first spoonful, it tasted like sand. Dry. Dead. Seasoned with silence. Nothing about the meal delighted her. In fact, each bite stung like a reminder that this place, no matter how golden, wasn't home. Her taste buds had not betrayed her. They were simply reflecting her truth. There's no joy in food served where love is absent. She dropped her fork slowly, her eyes not focused on the plate but lost somewhere far away. And there, seated in that luxury, she saw her mother, not in front of her but inside her mind. The realization hit her like thunder disguised in a whisper. This is the life Mother chose. Long ago. She remembered growing up watching her father bend backward to please the woman he loved. Every little request, every demand, every desperate attempt to make her feel valued. He did it with joy. But her mother? She always seemed dissatisfied. Nothing ever pleased her for long. The roof is leaking again. This dress is too cheap. Why don't you have more land like your mates? Zalaira remembered the look in her father's eyes. A man in love, helplessly bleeding kindness into a cup that never filled. No. Was this the same script? Different characters? Her mother's plea to Degra echoed in her ears now. Come for your wife next month. By then I would have calmed her and her father. It wasn't betrayal Zalaira felt anymore. It was understanding, the kind that hurts more than betrayal ever could. She understood now. Her mother didn't defend her because she believed in the marriage. She defended it because she believed in money. The hunger for more had blinded her to her daughter's pain. And now Zalaira sat in a marble hall eating tasteless luxury, feeling the very void her father must have lived with all his life. She whispered under her breath, almost in tears. So this is what it means to be a woman bought and sold. To live inside a house but never feel at home. The servants bowed and moved in silence, not daring to interrupt her moment of reflection. She rose from the table without finishing the meal, her appetite swallowed by sorrow. As she walked away, she didn't feel like a queen anymore. She felt like a replica of the woman she had promised herself she'd never become. Like mother, like daughter. Unless something changes. Now. The air in the mansion was crisp that evening, rich with the scent of well-watered flowers and trimmed grass. As twilight cloaked the compound in soft gold, Degra, dressed in one of his finest robes, wine-colored silk with gold embroidery, led Zalaira into the West Wing Lounge, a luxurious space with glass walls that gave a full view of the garden below. Sit, my queen, he said, gesturing with a rehearsed charm that made Zalaira's skin crawl slightly, though she obeyed, sitting with calm elegance. One by one the mansion staff filed in, standing in neat rows like pupils before a school principal. Zalaira had expected a dry, formal listing of names. But Degra surprised her. He began introducing each staff member not just by name, but by function, personality, and past accomplishments, like a proud headmaster introducing his finest teachers to the Commissioner of Education. There was Clemora, the head maid, whom he praised as the mother hen of the household, A woman who sees every stain before it lands. There was Osman, the cook who once catered for a visiting president and whose jollof rice, Degra claimed, had convinced an ambassador to postpone a war. Then came the chauffeur Temban, who drove through a riot just to bring back the perfume I knew would suit you best, Zalaira. Zalaira, though guarded, found herself genuinely amused. The session felt theatrical but also oddly warm, like watching a well-rehearsed play where everyone had a role. Then Degra's tone shifted. His voice grew slower, more deliberate. "And now," he said, turning slightly, "let me introduce to you my most trusted hand. The man whose fingers have turned soil into poetry. The one who gave my compound the beauty that first made me believe paradise could be handcrafted." Zalaira turned her head gently, and gasped. There, standing tall in the last row, was the gardener. The same man from her dream. The one who had emerged from the forest, untied her and led her to freedom, only to have her beg to return to her father's house. His real-life form stood now in full flesh. Slightly older. Calm. Mysterious. He had gentle, knowing eyes. And something about his quiet presence stilled the air around him. Degra continued, unaware of the storm he'd just stirred inside Zalaira. "This is Raymond the gardener. If heaven has a fragrance, then it's from the roses he plants. I have never seen a man love earth like this one does. Loyal. Quiet. Focused. He makes my compound Eden." Degra smiled, and Zalaira, without missing a beat, whispered in her mind. "And you are the only devil therein." Degra turned to Raymond. "Raymond, from today onward, Zalaira is not just your queen, she is your priority. Take her around the garden, show her every flower. And every morning I want her to receive a bouquet, crafted with your hands. Let her feel at home here." Raymond bowed low, but when he looked up he smiled. A quiet, genuine smile, not forced or pretentious. And something deep inside Zalaira sparked. She didn't understand it, but she felt it. A warmth, a sense of familiarity, almost as though her soul had recognized someone her eyes were only just now seeing. She smiled faintly back, barely. But inside her heart she whispered, "Who are you, Raymond? Why do I feel like you're the one thing in this place that isn't pretending?" Zalaira could not wait for the garden tour. She could not wait to know this man. Not the mansion. Not the wealth. Not the fake prince. But the gardener. And so the zebra was captured but not broken. Dragged into a mansion of roses and riches, Zalaira found herself in a golden cage, purchased without love, celebrated without joy. Yet beneath the vines and beneath the velvet silence, something stirred, a presence she never saw coming. In a house where everything seemed bought, could the gardener be the only thing that was real? Will Zalaira surrender to the fate money forced upon her? Or will the man from the garden water a seed in her heart that even gold cannot buy? Don't miss episode 2 of this gripping tale, The Garden That Bloomed Without Permission. Subscribe now, turn on your notifications, and join us as we uncover secrets, heartbreak, and a love that might yet grow from unexpected soil. This is not just a story, it's a journey.